Hello, everyone, and welcome to Growth Stage, podcast by FastSpring, where we discuss how digital product companies grow revenue, build meaningful products, and increase the value of their business. I'm your host, Jesse Poliato. Today, I support the digital product community as part of my role here with FastSpring, and I love bringing the best of the community to you here on the Growth Stage podcast. I'm super pumped because today we have with us Sudipto Manna. We're going to get insights from Sudipto on how to unlock your global growth by leveraging payment methods. So we're going to look at a few payment methods that are important for particular geographies, why they're important, and how FastSpring is supporting digital product and gaming companies with these methods. So Sudipto, thanks for joining today. That's awesome to have you.
Hey, hi Jesse. Thanks for having me on this call. I'm Sudipto. I'm a payments product manager here at FastSpring, and my goal is to build payments product and strategy which matches our vision. And at the end of the day, help our customers to grow. As the name of the podcast says, growth stage. I'm responsible for the growth of the company. And how can I do that? I'm doing that through the payment offerings, which would help you to grow globally as well as locally.
I love that. Just for folks that may not be familiar with the terminology or just with kind of the payments landscape, can you just quickly define what is a payment method?
Yeah, that's a good question. When you talk to anyone who is coming into this new market, they would say, what's payment method? Payment method is basically the instrument that your customer uses to purchase your offerings or services that you're offering, right? Examples would be credit card, PayPal, Apple Pay, Google Pay. Those are the payment methods that we call out. And payment method is the catalyst between you and the recurring revenue or the revenue that you would accrue.
Why is it important, especially with your role and where FastSpring is about to release even supporting additional payment methods? Why are payment methods important to think about? Why are they important for a digital product company to care about? Why are they so important?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, payment method is the catalyst for your business. And why is it important? In today's world, where customer has a very small attention span, you want to make sure that you get to the revenue, you get to the customers real quick. And they don't want to spend much time in choosing or looking at payment methods. By the time you curate that and you offer any solution, people might just hop on to other services and you lose that particular customer. So why is it payment method so important? Because you want to convert your customer. And if I may, we at FastSpring make sure that your customers get the best payment method. We strive hard to get you and your customers the best payment method that will help them to convert. Oftentimes we hear customers are unable to purchase something because they don't have a specific payment method or they have challenges purchasing from your store. So that's where FastSpring comes in, and we look at our data, we analyze it, and we make sure that things are good. And how can we improve your conversion?
Yeah, it's really a key. I would almost frame it like with what you're saying. It's like a key variable in this algebra equation of how do I increase my checkout time? How do I decrease the friction in checking out for a customer, where when they don't have to hunt around for a payment methodology that might work for them, if they can just go, then they can just buy, and then as a company, my sales will increase.
Yeah, that's a really great point. And the whole concept here is how can I reduce the friction? As a prospective buyer, I would say, hey, this particular website has the best payment method that I can use. Let me just use it. I don't want to scramble around and see what payment methods are there and what works for me, right? Recently, we launched this payment product, preferred payment method, which helps navigate or helps our users to tell the customers which is their best preferred payment method that they should use. So by this, we have seen a huge conversion in our approval rate, and that leads to more revenue, that leads to more new net retention of customers.
Very interesting. So it's actually suggesting this is the best payment method for this particular geography or this particular language?
Yes. Specifically, if you are selling locally, like in developing nations or outside United States internationally, we do recommend which payment method you should offer. Traditionally, when we look at we are in United States, so when we look at the data, we'll say we should offer credit card. But when we munch through the data tells us that it's not about just credit card. There are so many different payment methods available.
Hmm.
A classic example would be if you are coming from Netherlands, Ideal is the most preferred payment method there,
Uh-huh.
right? Or if you're coming from Brazil, Pix is the most preferred payment there. So now when we talk about which payment method I should offer to my customers, those are the payment methods I would say. You don't always go with what you or like what the internet or like what your local people. You always go with what the local people would prefer, and not
Yeah.
by the common or standard thing like, oh, we should offer credit cards or we should offer PayPal. Those are the biggest payment method out there, but might not be the best fit for your local customers.
Yeah,
If
this
you're
is
seeing,
really an expression of being very customer focused. It's not about where I'm
absolutely.
selling from or what I may have visibility of in my environment, but where's my customer? And I would say as a growing business, where do I want the next customers, or where do I think the next customers may come from? How do I go into that area, reduce friction, and make it easier to actually gain market share in those places?
Yeah, and as you mentioned, if you want to grow, you have to reduce the friction. You cannot grow
Yeah.
if there's still a friction. Like attention span is again coming into picture all the time. Like
Yeah.
you definitely want your customers to immediately look at your checkout and say, "Oh, I have this payment method, or this particular vendor supports this payment method, so let me just complete the payment." And it should be snappy. It should be fast. You should not have a payment method which takes like minutes to complete. So
Yeah.
we do prefer or we do intend to provide the fastest payment method as much as possible. So we have a very um, like a well-built machinery, I would say, the payment infrastructure, which helps in doing this whole routing for you, and it's very fast. It's very interesting.
So how many? I think we talked about this once. How many payment methods are out there total in the world?
Too many. That's the shortest answer. But yeah, in the world, there are more than 50 plus payment methods which are out there. And when we look at how those payment methods operate and why they're coming up so much, control. Each and
Mm,
every country wants to have their own control over their payment method
sure.
because it involves money movement. So if you look at countries like Brazil, India, China, they are well in their means to build their own local payment methods.
Hmm.
And they definitely want a full grown control over the payment methods that they're building. And also, they want to support their masses, their population. So if you look at the BRICS nation, it is all their homegrown payment method. Brazil
Hmm.
has PIX, India has UPI, China has Alipay, WeChat Pay. Those are the really popular payment methods. So if you want to go into those markets, you definitely have to have those payment methods available on your checkout.
Yeah, it's interesting. You had mentioned Pix a few minutes ago, which is part of that bricks layout. And FastSpring released support for Pix as a payment method earlier this year. Could you kind of talk, maybe take a little bit of a deeper dive into that? Like, what is Pix? Why is it valuable? Maybe some of the information around that people may not be aware of.
Yeah, absolutely. So in Q1 2024, we launched PIX. PIX is one of the most popular payment method in Brazil right now,
Hmm.
with more than 100 million people using
Wow.
PIX for transaction. Why is PIX so important, and what has Brazilian government done for that? So Pix is a payment product funded by Brazilian government, and the main reason why they're offering Pix is because they want to help the unbanked customer. If you're in
Hmm.
Brazil, it's very difficult or it's very challenging for you to acquire a credit card. Well, we as an American, we think like, oh, maybe it's easier. Everybody should have a credit card or a debit card. But if you go to developing nations in like Brazil, getting access to credit or debit card is far more difficult. So Brazilian government came up with this innovative solution known as PEX. It's an interesting payment method, and by offering this payment method, like we see 100 million plus. By the way, Brazil is the biggest nation in LATAM, and we expect more than $50 billion worth of e-commerce revenue coming from that country.
Oh, wow. With I know with Pix versus credit cards, like you said, the access is different. I believe you had mentioned also that the a couple different metrics are different. The approval rate for transactions that run through Pix, as well as dispute and chargeback rates, are better on Pix than on credit cards. Can you talk about those metrics a little bit? Like, what do they mean? Should people worry about that or be concerned? Or what, how does that impact somebody who's selling into Brazil and potentially using Pix versus credit card for their checkout?
Absolutely. So Pix is an interesting payment method, and since Pix is directly backed by the bank, and it's a QR-based payment method. So if you have that banking app, only when you have the banking app and you scan the QR code and pay for the product, then only the transaction is authorized and the money is gone. It's a QR-based payment method, so it's secure. Uh,
Hmm.
and when we compare Pix with credit card or debit card, it's far more seamless. And only if you have a bank account, you have access to Pix. So because of security, it's really like non-disputable, in other words. Unlike credit cards, which have like very high probability of disputes. And in terms of approval rate, since you're directly connected, Pix is directly connected to your bank account, there is nothing the bank has to worry about the money, right?
Hmm.
If you have money, the Pix transaction would go through. Unlike credit card, because where somebody is giving you a credit line and it can sometimes succeed or sometimes fail. When we look at our approval rate for Pix, it's in high 90s, whereas credit cards are far below that. So in terms of approval rate, Pix outperforms the traditional payment methods like cards. And in terms of disputes and chargeback, because you are the ones who are like the customer is the one who is authorizing that payment. So there is less to no probability of having dispute. So these are the two main reasons where we started offering Pix. And based upon what we see, the trend is pretty significant and it's pretty interesting for us, where we see a significant amount of growth in Brazil because of Pix. This also plays into the mindset, right? Where if the customers see like their preferred payment method out there, they're most likely to convert. So in last like 9 months or in last 3 quarters, we see our Brazilian transaction grow by as much as 200%.
Oh,
So
wow.
that's a really great growth. And we see customers who have never attempted any purchase from us to like show up. That's a great sign, and we are helping our customers to grow in all the areas. Brazil and LATAM has been a significant boost for our portfolio.
That's interesting. There's kind of a couple things that you mentioned, and I mean the primary one is that the approval rates, the disputes, the chargebacks. These are lower with local payment methods, or at least in Pix's case, is significantly lower. And so that decreases friction, kind of to extend that thing we were talking about a few minutes ago, where you just want to decrease friction and accelerate the amount of the sales that can be successfully completed and the speed at which they can be completed in order to increase things. The thing you said at the end, though, really is interesting to me because I come from a marketing background. That when people see Pix, I don't know if you were exactly going here, but where my head went is if I'm a customer in Brazil and I'm choosing between different vendors and I say, oh, there's two or three companies that sell the thing that I want to buy, but these guys have Pix. There's a brand impression that makes me feel like they know me. I trust them. They understand Brazil. They understand where I live. They understand maybe other concerns like support tech concerns or other parts of the business cycle that I may be entering into later. And so that may increase confidence. I think there's almost a trust signal is I think the phrase I'm looking for here that you get from this, which is an interesting way to think about this.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. Trust signal and brand recognition. As soon as they
Hmm.
see like, hey, this is this payment method, this particular partner supports, like as a customer, I would also do that. Like if I'm going somewhere and I know that, hey, I can pay using this payment method, I'm like, great.
Yeah.
I instantly feel connected with that purchase flow. So that's a really like a mindset thing, but
Yeah.
like it's really good.
So It's a great transition. So, speaking of brand recognized payment methods, two of the biggest out there, at least definitely in Western world and definitely in the United States, would be Apple Pay and Google Pay. FastSpring, I believe, earlier this year, fully kind of opened the aperture of the types of purchases that we allow on the platform from those payment methods or through those payment methods. Everybody, I would think has probably heard of at least Apple Pay, probably Google Pay as well.
Yeah.
Can you give some comparisons? I think it's interesting maybe to look at the types of either regions or audiences that may use one or the other of those. And if there's any other kind of insights you can give around that, that'd be great.
Yeah, I love insights and providing insights to people. So great. Apple Pay and Google Pay are like the two most recognized payment method across the world, right? And they have a like really good distinction between them. So Apple Pay is far more reachable in developed nations. So if you look at United States, Europe, Apple Pay is very much ingrained. And when we look at the customer profile, those are slightly higher AOV customers. When we
Okay.
look at Google Pay, like just Google Pay is offered on Android devices as well as on the browsers. But when you look at the profile, it's more coming from the developing nations. So when we look at those two payment methods, they look same, they feel same, but they are completely different payment methods. One caters towards the developed nations, and one caters towards the developing nations. And if you want to like grow in either of those markets, like FastSpring is a solution where we can offer both. The other key distinction between Apple and Google Pay would be the approval rate, where we
Hmm.
see a tremendous high approval rate by going through those payment methods because the payment institute or instruments are already being validated by the banks. So um, those makes a real big difference, and
Hmm.
we see constant increase in our approval rate and conversion rate. And again, the brand recognition, if you say we offer Apple Pay or Google Pay, the customer is ready to pay with, but to purchase your product. It's as simple as that. We have seen significant growth in our adoption rate and new user acquisition from the stores where Apple Pay and Google Pay was initially launched. So we took a decision and increased the coverage to all our portfolio accounts on, yeah.
Yeah, it's interesting that with something like Pix, there's a trust signal or a brand recognition that says this company that is selling this product understands this local market. It's interesting. Apple and Google kind of have a slightly different recognition or trust signal, which is it's less about localization and much more about they have the competency and the scope as an international company. And so there's sort of this trust, like, okay, they're competent and they're handling a very large geography and region and amount of audiences.
Yeah, very well put, Jesse. Like those are like I would say massive companies who have massive branding and promotion, and we feel, and this is like proven in multiple cases, we don't have to promote those payment methods. Those
Yeah.
payment methods are self-promoting. The brand value is so high that customers are fully aware of what those payment methods are, and since those are global companies, they have a huge market presence. So we do benefit from that marketing presence that Google and Apple have, and we are benefiting from those marketing and other areas that Apple, Google do.
Oh, that's excellent. I'm gonna veer back towards the localization because I know one of the payment methods that FastSpring will be supporting very soon is Kakao Pay. Can you talk about that? I won't even give any previews. I'll just let you kind of explain what that is and why that's helpful, and maybe which audience a company that would be wanting to use that would be trying to reach with that.
Yeah, so I would start with the audience here. Kakao Pay is primarily built for South Korea. So
Hmm.
in South Korea, it's a very tech-savvy nation, and almost everybody have mobile internet access. It is one of the highest, like it has one of the highest internet penetration. Close to 99% of the customers have access to internet, and when people are on internet, they talk.
Mm.
And in Southeast Asia, and specifically in South Korea, they have multiple messenger apps. Kakao Talk is one of that messenger. And the beauty of Kakao Talk is it has the embedded payment method itself. So you have your customers, like close to 40 million customers who are on internet, and they use Kakao Talk as a messenger. And you get access to the payment method inside. So if you are a customer, if you are looking into South Korea, you will get immediately get access to 40 million plus customers who are actually using the payment method. So
Interesting.
it's a great initiative, and again, it's a product coming out from like one of the fastest developing nation, I would say, tech savvy nation, and pretty interesting payment method. Um, when we look at our adoption rate and how it helped, close to like one of our big customer, when we launched Kakao Pay, close to 40% of their revenue was going through Kakao Pay.
Oh,
And
wow.
that was an interesting data point that we monitored and observed. And it made sense, right? If you're selling in that market and the buyers are aware of that payment method, they are willing to convert using that payment method.
Yeah.
And that's what we have seen. Like the trend continues to be in a positive direction, and we believe it would just keep on increasing. Uh, and the other point is in markets like South Korea, where we already have a pretty huge credit card penetration. When we
Mhm.
looked at our data and we saw 40% like a 40% adoption for Kakao Pay, we believe that people are moving away from these traditional payment methods. So
Oh,
if you want to like make an impact and grow, you have to adopt to those alternate payment methods, specifically the local payment methods, which is offered in that region. So without offering local payment methods, you might lose out on chunk of this customer space.
that's a really powerful kind of punchline, I think. I would say in this conversation we're having right now, like that's a key takeaway for somebody who's growing their business, that if you want to grow, you have to embrace kind of these alternative payment methods, just because of the data, where the trend lines are from the data.
Yeah.
Can you talk for a second too? I think gaming is also a part of the South Korean kind of market that would be embraced here. Yeah.
Yeah, great segue. So we looked at multiple research data, and like South Korea has a huge gaming community, and for sure, like when we looked at the data provided by Apple App Store, South Korea was the third largest country in terms of gaming spend. And the trend continues to increase day by day. And when we correlate the data, why they have so much app spend, we correlate that to the payment method. So we can say that because the customers are always on their phone in South Korea,
Uh-huh.
they tend to use that device to pay for the product. And what product? Gaming.
Yeah.
So this is an interesting correlation that we found out by looking at and reading the different kinds of interesting insights that are provided. So it's a very powerful payment product, and specifically if you're into gaming.
Yeah. That blows my mind that that was the third highest mobile gaming revenue country in
Yeah,
the
yeah,
world, was South Korea. Just if thinking of population sizes and stuff, that I would not have probably guessed that, but that's really interesting.
yeah. And
Um,
just to put a slight asterisk on that, um, people are also planning to move from App Store to Web Store. So if you want to tap into your customer base, and web store is the like final destination, you have to support those payment methods, because as you know, Apple has a very like a walled system. So
yeah.
Apple might not offer Kakao Pay. So there are plenty of people who are currently on spending on App Store. They will move away from App Store to somewhere else, and that somewhere else is Web Store. If you want to bank on those customers, you
Hmm.
have to support those local payment methods. In this case, Kakao Pay is the
That's That's super interesting. Yeah, because if I'm a mobile gaming company, I may be pursuing a direct to consumer strategy, which for anybody who's listening and may not know what that is, that's where instead of charging directly through the platform that the game is on, whether it be Apple or Android, you actually try and lead your users to pay on a web shop or on a different platform. which actually protects some of your revenue because Apple and Google take a very high percentage of the revenue that transacts on their platform. So that's a great point. If you're one of those mobile games and you're saying, I want to pursue a direct to consumer strategy and move people out of the app into a different payment method, you have to support, or a good idea in South Korea would be Kakao Pay, where they're going to move over into that channel potentially to pay.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely.
That's really interesting. Can you talk also a little bit kind of about WeChat? I mean, speaking of messenger apps and different things, like I feel like this is maybe a close parallel, but with WeChat, which is something that FastSpring will be supporting as well as a payment method. In my experience, I think it can be difficult for an audience based in the West or based in the US to really understand the dominance of WeChat in Chinese kind of in their usage. Can you talk a little bit about WeChat and how we support that and what's there?
Yeah, so WeChat is by far the most popular payment method in China. So there are few like homegrown and native payment method. WeChat is one of the biggest payment method out there. The sheer size and scale of that payment method is huge. Close to 1 billion customers are using WeChat because it's China and
Just to underscore that 1 billion users on
yes,
WeChat.
1 billion with a capital P in it. So it's a huge market. There are two reasons why those payment methods are so popular. So China, they have, as we all know, they have pretty strict rules, kind of like a walled garden.
Mhm.
So Western countries or Western merchants cannot get into China because of those complex rules and regulation, and it often creates a huge barrier, right? So getting into the Chinese market is really difficult, and I would say less than 1% of the customers in China have access to traditional payment methods like Visa or MasterCard, right?
Mm.
So to reach your Chinese customers, and if you're primarily looking into China, to reach your Chinese customers, you need to have a payment method that is readily available in Chinese market. So WeChat Pay is that payment product. And how do we and we are planning to offer WeChat Pay. It's in beta rollout right now as we speak, and we see tremendous growth and adoption in that payment method itself. So we looked at our data, close to 30% of our transaction volume is already diverting towards WeChat Pay.
Oh,
It's,
wow.
again, as I mentioned, it's a great payment method if you're selling games or if you're selling e-commerce. And the only thing that I can think of is the total upside it would give to our customers.
Yeah.
It's a game changer for me. It's a game changer for the business whom we are supporting. It's a massive payment product, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's I think one of the things that really strikes me on WeChat is just how um to sell into China, it's almost an essential. Like if you're going to
Yes.
sell into that, it's not like, oh, it's nice, or like some of the things we've said so far in this conversation. We're like, oh, it can reduce friction, it can accelerate purchases, it can help with branding. In this case, like, no, you just have to have it. You can't sell if you're not going to support this payment method in China.
That's a really really like a good way of summarizing it. As we talked about briefly, companies are like finding it really difficult to get into that market, be it China, be in like other Southeast Asian countries.
Mm.
But in other Southeast Asian countries, they still have some kind of alternate payment options that they can offer. But in China, it's like if you want to support China, you have to offer this payment method. Without this payment method, there is no way you can succeed. There is no like it's like you don't have you're not providing anything to your customers to pay with.
Yeah.
You can like maybe if you're offering a product for free, that's a
Right.
good way. But if you're not, if revenue and income is your target, then you have to offer that payment product.
So if you want to give stuff away, you could do that. But if you want to charge money, yeah,
Yeah.
you gotta do it. There's one other payment method I wanted to touch on quickly before we kind of wrap up, and that's Klarna. FastSpring will be releasing support in the EU for Klarna. And in kind of my perception, Klarna has really blown up in the last few years. You see it everywhere. Can you describe like what is FastSpring supporting with Klarna? Why is Klarna important? What region would that be important for?
Yeah, Klarna is again one of the fastest growing payment method in the world right now. And the reason like is quite frankly security. The people think like Klarna is one of the secure payment methods out there. So and we are releasing Klarna in 8 countries:
Mm.
Germany, Austria, Netherlands, Sweden, and few more. We do believe Klarna is a popular payment method, and it would have a significant impact in our customer conversion from regions like Germany and Austria.
Hmm.
It's a pretty interesting payment method, and the rate at which it's growing gives us a really good signals that it will keep on growing and it would help our customer base. Um, it is still a nascent product on our portfolio, and
Hmm.
we are continuously improving and supporting more and more capability and features that will come out. So today we are only planning to offer standalone. We want to see the adoption. We want to see how customers perceive this product. We are confident it would be a great fit for the customers, but still we want to make sure that we are listening to what the customers are saying and build a better experience for them.
Yeah, good to know. Because with Klarna, there's quite a bit of options, I think, as a seller in terms of multiple payments, installments, whatever terminology. So basically, from the outset here, we're kind of testing our way into that, but look for more as we kind of progress with
Exactly.
it.
You mentioned something about installment. So installment is a great initiative. Like if you are selling like a large ticket of dollar, like large ticket item, you need to provide like your customers with an option to break their payment. They don't want to commit everything to
Hmm.
your large ticket item. So installment is one of the key initiative that would happen in next like few years, so that you get the customers to step into your system and then start using it before even committing everything, all the money that they have. So installment would be something which would come up more and more in future, and FastSpring is well prepared to offer those products to you.
Yeah, I can see with subscriptions that not being as relevant. If I'm a SaaS company that wants to sell into Germany, for example, and my product is a subscription-based product, installments are sort of irrelevant. It's really more about the $20 a month or whatever my subscription rate might be.
Yeah. So when we talk about subscriptions and installment, that they don't really go well hand in hand. Maybe there are some other products which are extremely expensive, and you really want to break those up. But as you mentioned, the example of $20 product or €20 product from Germany, like I would rather pay it
Yeah,
upfront
right.
and commit rather than breaking it up into smaller, tiny installments.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing today, Sudipto. This has been super cool just to get some insights, kind of get your perspective. A lot of very kind of, I would say, inside information on how these payment methods work, who they serve. So I really appreciate that. Um, and then thank you for joining us here on the Grow Stage podcast today. I'm your host, Jesse Poliato. I support the digital product community as part of my role here at FastSpring and love bringing the best of the community, which today is Sudipto. Thanks, Ben. And we'll look forward to catching up with everybody next time. Thanks so much, all. Cheers.
Thank you, Jesse, and thanks for having me on this podcast.
Absolutely.